sound of that tractor means it's time for us to put our boots on and go to work. Although, in the spirit of full transparency, I'm actually not wearing my boots today. I'm wearing my Jordans, which, by the way, are perfectly fine, acceptable PPE for the studio. So just wanted to be up front with you. Welcome to the Give Us the Dirt podcast, powered by HGC. My name is Brandon Lindsay, and I am your host. I want to start a little bit differently today. Several weeks ago, we had a couple of guests to the podcast that shared their story. Neither guest had ever been on a podcast before. They were nervous about coming in, but by the end of the show, I could tell that they were having fun and even enjoying themselves at the chance to tell their story. They enjoyed it so much that they ended up sending me a gift, which was completely unnecessary. But that gift was a Case pocket knife. And accompanying the gift was this letter that I want to read to you. It says, Brandon, thanks so much for including us in the Give Us the Dirt podcast. We always enjoy the opportunity to shine a positive light on the construction industry. Enclosed, please enjoy this Case Brothers Sod Buster pocket knife. Case Brothers is one of the true made-in-the-USA companies, and after 125 years, quality and dependability still matter. Case named the knife the Sod Buster in the 1930s during the Dust Bowl. A sod buster was a derogatory term used by the upper class to refer to people who worked in the dirt. Case presumably decided to flip the connotation of the term and use it to praise and acknowledge hardworking, utilitarian Americans. I think Case was exactly right in shining a positive light on hardworking people like the ones we both have the privilege to work with daily. Thanks for your efforts and your friendship. People, that is exactly what Give Us the Dirt podcast is all about. It's about changing the narrative. It's about flipping the stereotypes and putting a spotlight on the hardworking men and women that make the construction industry great. I am proud to be a sod buster. I'm proud to come from a long line of sod busters, and I'm proud to use this platform to excavate the stories of fellow sod busters across the industry. To my friend that gave me the knife, but more importantly, this letter and some very needed perspective, thank you. So speaking of sod busters, we've got a real live one in the studio with us today, and this guy is not wearing Jordans, okay? Grayson Glover is a dear friend of mine, and I have the joy of being able to serve alongside of him at Hoopah Grading. I'm telling you right now, I'm calling it. This will be one of the coolest success stories that you've ever heard, and by the end of it, you'll be saying it couldn't have happened to a better guy. Grayson is currently VP of Construction at Hoopah Grading Company, and it is my joy to be able to get the dirt from him today. Welcome, Grayson.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to the podcast.
Man, you've done this a million times, haven't you?
To some degree, yeah.
You should. You have the perfect voice for this.
Thank you.
All right, so you've listened to the podcast a few times. You've heard a few of the episodes, and you know how we introduce our guests. So how would Lindsay introduce you to someone that does not know who Grayson Glover is?
She would say, this is my husband, Grayson, and what you see is what you get. He is what he is, and there's not a lot of glam, so to speak, I guess. I mean, it's me.
See what you get.
Yeah, what you see is what you get.
Well, that is not what she said about you. I actually called
This ought to be interesting.
I actually called it Ask Her, and she said, Grayson is patient, kind, calm, and no matter what he's doing, he does everything the right way. And I thought, whose wife says that about their husband?
Thank you, babe.
Yeah, that was great. That was fantastic. So we're going to dig into your story today, Grayson. I appreciate you being willing to share it. I have to admit that I did not know as much about your story as I thought I did. Okay. And as I've started learning more about it, it was kind of like a Netflix series that I couldn't stop watching, right? It was I know the end, but then I started learning some of the pieces of this story. And so we're going to do that today. Our listeners have enjoyed hearing success stories from people and how they got there and the paths they took to success. And so we're going to do that today, but we're not going to take a linear approach to this. We're going to start with the end first,
okay,
and then go back. And so I know you are nowhere close to the finish line in your career,
yes,
but you are currently the VP of Construction at Hoopah Grading Company. I have to assume at this point in your life, you've reached many of the goals that you've set out for yourself already. You've bought, built, and sold a company. You have. I don't know this for certain, but I assume that you have obtained some level of financial freedom at this point in your life. You have a wonderful family, and somehow through all of that, you've managed to gain the love and respect of everyone that you've been able to touch along the way. So, Grayson, I know you would never say this, but I think it's safe to assume that you are what most people would call successful, okay? So, but I also know that path was not an easy one, and it certainly was not a predictable one. So take us back. That's the end, right? Okay, that's
the end.
Where did this story start?
It started, Brandon, probably when I was 7 years old. My grandfather on my mother's side was a huge influence in my life, and he was a captain in the Charlotte Fire Department, and also ran a gas station. And my grandmother worked for Allison Fence Company. They were very just salt of the earth people, but very family oriented and hardworking people. And so I guess my granddaddy probably started me on a tractor when I was maybe 6.
Is that the tractor?
Yeah. That would be my first tractor there. Yes, sir.
What a great picture.
My granddaddy built that for me. And it had a little buggy so I could go pick up sticks, and it pedaled. And in that picture, I'm probably about 3 or 4. So yeah, I guess my first tractor with the engine was about 6 or 7, but that was my first true John Deere right there. So, and so they were a huge part of my life and my upbringing. And so after, I guess, that first tractor there, I got wanting to know when I could get on the one with the engine. So he started me on old Massey Ferguson, and every time I'd work with him on Saturdays or after school, he'd teach me a little bit more. And then about that time too, I started taking some interest. My father and my Uncle Daryl, they had owned a lawn and landscape business about that same time. I think they started that when I was maybe 8 years old. So I took some liking to not only tractors and cutting trees, but cutting grass and landscaping. And I would help them some. And then I started, as I got a little bit older, started cutting my own yards and trimming shrubs and, putting out pine needles, whatever, mostly for my friends' parents. So I guess it was 1993. I was 15 years old, and a friend of mine's parents needed the shrubs trimmed and pine needles done and stuff. So I was in their yard working. It was August of 93, and this gentleman pulls up, and he was 49 years old at the time, and we had never met. And so he rolls down the window. He said, "Who do you work for?" And I said, "No, sir, I don't work for anyone. So I work for myself." And he said, "How old are you?" And I said, "I'm 15. And he said, "You want a job?" And I said, "How much you pay?" And he told me, and he said, he said, "You look like a hardworking young man." He said, "I'll start you out at $7 an hour." And at the time, I thought that was the cat's meow, And I asked him, I said, "Now, do you mind if I still do my side work on the side if I need to?" And he said, "No, that's fine." So I started working for him the weekends, afternoons, when I wasn't playing sports or whatever. Whenever I could, I just help him. And he did, at the time, it was a lawn and landscape, so we did yard maintenance. We maintained the subdivision, and we started doing that. And he started to get a little traction, picked up some more work, and so we continued to work until we graduated high school. And James got a scholarship to Western Carolina to play football, and I decided to go to East Carolina, and I did not know what I wanted to do. I'll be honest with you, I had no clue. I think I picked East Carolina just because that's where the majority of my friends were ending up, to be honest.
So did you want to go to college?
In hindsight, if you would have asked me that question knowing what I know now, I would have told you no.
So why'd you do it? Why'd you apply? You just felt like it was what you were supposed to do?
What I was supposed to do, and neither one of my parents. My mom went to school and got an associate's degree from Elon, but my dad was in the Air Force in Vietnam, and neither one of them had a 4-year degree. And they wanted me to pursue a higher education, and about all my friends were, so I thought it was the thing to do, sure. So I did. And I was thinking history and maybe going back to be a high school football coach or something. I didn't know. So did my freshman year at East Carolina, and then that summer came home and worked again. And by that time, that was the summer of 97. And it didn't take long where we figured out there was less competition in silk fence, which was fairly new at the time, than there was production landscaping. So about 96, 97, Randy changed the name of the company from Lewis Lawn and Landscape to Erosion Control Services. So I came home in January 98. I finished that semester at East Carolina, came home in January 98, and I worked all the way till August. And I started thinking about it about halfway, probably about April, May. I said, I got to make a decision. Either I'm going back to college or I'm going to do this full time. And we were starting to gain a little bit of steam. It was myself and Randy. It was just the two of us. And by that time, he's 55, 56 years old. So we're out there, pounding silk fence posts together. I did most of the pounding. He did most of the fence work. But that summer before let me back up. So about that April or May, I said, I'm going to give school one more shot. So my cousin, that's 4 years older than me, was going to school at University of Georgia at the time. And he was majoring in agronomy with concentration in turf grass maintenance, big golf course superintendent. And I said, well, that might be something I could do. So I enrolled at NC State and decided to go back that fall semester of 98 and give it one more shot. And did that, but then, like I say, worked all summer. And then we hired that July 98, since I was decided to go back to school, we hired 2 employees, Abel Montoya and Guillermo Perez, and they're both still with us 24 years later. But we hired them then about July, and I kind of got them trained up. And so I left it with Randy and Guille and Abel. Went back to NC State, and a month into it, I said, I made a mistake. So I called my parents, and I called Randy, and I said, man, I made a mistake. I think I want to come on home.
So at this point, you're still working alongside of Randy. You guys are running the business together.
Yes, sir.
And you said, all right, college is not my thing. I'm going to work, which, Grayson, I can tell that theme was there from the beginning. I'm sitting, as you were telling the beginning of your story, I'm thinking, what makes a 12-year-old go motivated to go out and cut lawns and to mow grass and put out pine needles and work? Was it the pay? Was it the money? Or was it just your love of working? Did you just... I
think the love of working, because I also had another buddy I used to detail cars with, and I started helping him detail cars probably about age of 12. He was a little bit older than me, but we had grown up going to church together and elementary school together, and so I would help him do that if I wasn't cutting grass or cutting trees or whatever. So it was just...
You just love to work.
I just like to work. I mean...
So walk me through. So you and Randy, you guys have decided, all right, we're going to do this thing. You're all in at this point.
All in.
Walk me through that transition of when Randy steps away from the business and you take the reins.
So when I called him, I said, I'm going to come on home. And he said, that's good. And I said, but I don't want to come home for $10 an hour. I said, now, I know we got to build this business. I said, I know it's going to take some time and some hard work. But I said, if you could put me on some type of salary. And he said, I'll do you one better. He said, and at this point, I guess he was probably 57, 99. He was, 57, 56, 57. And he said, if we can build this thing together, he said, when I turn 70,
it's yours.
It's yours. And he said, we'll work out some type of retirement for me. But he said, it'll be yours.
So there was your motivation.
So there was a lot of motivation there. So came home.
Did he hold true to that?
He did. He did. And I had to hold his feet to the fire there for a little bit, because this was in January 2012. So it was almost like, well, if I could get 2 more good years, now that we're crawling out of the recession, I said, no, a deal was a deal. I said, I stuck to my bargain, my end of the bargain. And And we had grown it. I mean, when I came home in January '99, Guy and Abel were with Randy, so it was the four of us, and we were doing about Brandon, probably $10,000 worth of work a month, and we were continuing to grow. And by the end of 2000, we ended up we'd gone from about 240,000 in '99 to about 1.2 million in 2000, and so we kept growing, kept working, and then.
So you've got your team assembled at this point.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Now you've brought in your buddies, you brought in your family, you've got your team assembled. Now you're ready, and you go and you say, Randy, it's time.
Yep. So that was in January of 2012. We took over the business. Randy relinquished all rights, and I went to James and Jeff, and I said, look, y'all been and we had just come out of the worst recession in history, which we learned a tremendous amount by coming through it. But, I told them, I said, the deal was between Randy and I said, but, I'm not foolish enough to think I could have done this all by myself. So when the paperwork was done with Randy, then I went back and said, all right, you're 33%, you're 33%, and I'm 34%. And so they were, of course, on board with that. And, I mean, they were right there with me the whole time. Like I said, I couldn't have done it without the two of them. And so we started growing and continued to grow. And by the time we did the merger with HGC, I mean, we were doing about
that was what, 2018?
2018, October 1st, 2018. And we were doing about 15 to 16 million a year there. So from '99, when I came home, we were doing 240,000 a year to fast forward then, 15 to 16 million
a year.
So with 80, 85, 86 employees.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible. And I love the fact, too, Grayson, that as you're telling that story, you've got James, you've got Jeff that come into this thing. You've been doing this since 1997 at this point, but you made them, they were equal partners in this.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And you guys did it together, and you did it very successfully. Tell me, real quick, tell me about the merger. So you get to a point, this has been a labor of love for you. You've poured your heart and soul into building this organization and this team, and you've done it, and this thing's taken off. Now you're at $16 million a year. Why merge?
Several things. The erosion industry had changed significantly since the early '90s, and it was getting into where all the third-party inspections, and I mean, the local municipality is one thing because that basically forces what used to be our clients to do the service we provide. So the municipality is one thing, but the internal stuff and the EPA regulations of monitoring and self-reporting and all, and it was getting to the point where, so between James, Jeff, and myself, we kind of ran individual companies. We had a base set of crews, and I would plan them. Jeff would do the same thing, and James would do the same thing. Then when we needed to overlap or work together, we would do it. And we kept the clients separate. So I had a group of clients. He did, James did, and Jeff did. So we were starting to get burned out. And between the three of us, so we had 99 clients, 99 companies we did business for. But between the three of us, we were running and managing about 317 active job sites. So it was helter-skelter. At this point, I was not married, and James was not married, and Jeff had a wife and two little ones. And James and I are looking at each other like, man, if we don't figure something out, we're never going to find time to stop and do what we wanted to do and start a family.
So you realize this wasn't sustainable.
Yeah.
You couldn't keep at this pace. And it was probably putting you in a position where you weren't able to do the parts of the job that you love.
Yeah.
You were having to do the other things that come along with a $16 million a year company.
Yes, sir. Yeah. It was tough.
And so you needed resources.
Yeah, and we're looking for the right people and the right resources, and we had some hiccups and couldn't hire anyone or couldn't find the right person, the right people to help manage and lead the company. And then another factor that had kind of taken some wind out of our sails in July of 2016, we had an employee killed. We still don't really know, never figured out the exact specifics of it, but a tractor flip, he was not buckled up and lost his life. And that took a lot of wind out of the 3 of ours sales. And it's something I'll never forget, and something I hope that I never have to go through again. So you take that accident into account, and then the frustration that was starting to build between myself, James, and Jeff, working 7 days a week. And I met Brian McManus in 2002, right after he came to work for Larry, and we ended up hitting it off. And we became good business associates, but then also started becoming good friends. And he and his wife, Christy, ended up introducing me to my wife. And then the friendship continued to grow from there as couples and friends. And he had been after me for a little while about leasing him some more help. He was having trouble finding help, couldn't find the right people, the right caliber of management. And I told him, I said, Brian, I don't have it. And this started not long after the accident, probably late 2016. And he kept kind of pecking at me, 2017. Hey, just send the crews to the shop. You don't have to do anything. Just give me a weekly rate. And I said, I can't do it. I said, I don't have enough to take care of my other clients. And at the time, Hoopla was about 16% of our gross business. So they were one of the biggest accounts. If at the time, I think they actually were the biggest account, HTC was. And so we were, James and Jeff and I, it was about June of 2018, we were sitting in the office late one night, and we'd been through the ringer on some thunderstorms, and it was a mess. And I just spun my old chair around. I said, fellas, I got an idea. And I said, I don't know if this will work, but I said, if y'all are game, I'll go talk to Brian. And I said, I think we could do some type of merger acquisition here, and it would benefit both companies tremendously. And they were all for it. So I texted Brian, and Brian and I never, as good of friends as we've become, we did not really go to many business lunches or anything. I mean, maybe a handful over 18 years, or 16 years, whatever it was. And I texted him. I said, man, can you meet me for lunch one day? And he said, sure. And he said, what's this about, G? And I said, it's about the future. And I just left it at that. So he's since told me that he was walking out of the office that day, and he looked at somebody and said, I think old Grayson's he's going to get us those extra crews I've been asking for 2 years. So we went to Harper's over here at Carolina Place Mall, and we sat down, and he had ordered a pizza, and I can't remember what I ordered, but we had, caught up a little bit, and then I said, well, what I wanted to talk to you about, and he was taking a bite of his pizza, and I said, you said you needed some help, and I said, how about all of us? And he pulled his old head back and chewed his pizza up, and he said, you mean like you and everybody? And I said, yep. And he said, well, hell yeah. And so we stood out in the parking lot for probably 4 hours. And at the time, he was still partners with Larry. He said, I need to go. Brian was majority, but Larry was still a big part. And he said, I need to run all this by Larry. So he called me back the next day and said, Larry gave thumbs up. So he said, how are we going to do this? You want to ask me something?
No, I remember that day.
Yeah.
I remember him coming back, and it was like his mind was blown. He wasn't prepared for that conversation, but he was excited about it. And I think that was probably the easiest decision that he's ever had to make, because it made perfect sense. And to bring those two teams together that were already working together to become a better company, it was an easy decision for him. But I remember that day. I remember him leaving to come talk to you and coming back and just thinking, wow.
Yeah.
Huge opportunity.
And it and I can't say enough about the man he is and how good he is to work with and work for as an employee. But, out of the 99 clients that I said ECS had, he is the only one in just Charlotte region that we would have done that deal with. And we had other people from Atlanta contact us about purchasing the business and us continuing to run it as an erosion control company. And the other part of it was some of our key guys that have been with us 20 plus years, they were getting on some age on them. And sometimes that erosion stuff, especially after big storms, I mean, it's very labor intensive work. And, my thinking was if these men could come work with their mind and their talents in the machine a little bit better, I mean, it would be easier on them through their 40s and 50s and 60s and give them some longevity in this career in this industry. And we didn't talk to any of them. So once Brian and I kind of did that, and then we went back one afternoon at Firebirds and figured everything out on a napkin. And then that's maybe a topic for another podcast, but it threw the attorneys and the CPAs off when the transparency, they're
not used to having something like that. And
no.
Transaction is going so well, and two people that are interested in helping each other.
Yeah. I mean, and he can't be in the room with us, and we were like, no, he can, and I can, and it's all good. Y'all just tell us what we got to do, but this is what we want to do. And
Grayson, what an incredible story. I mean, just to think about you starting off and mowing grass and taking that and getting that team, developing that team, bringing those people into the fold, building the business to what you did, and then having the courage to step out of it and say, look, this has grown beyond what I enjoy doing and what I feel comfortable doing, and it's time to join forces with someone else that can help us get to that next level. And that merger's been a success for you.
Oh, huge success.
And you're still working. You didn't have to.
No, sir, no, I didn't, but I truly do love what I do, and the people is what it's all about, and that core. I mean, unfortunately, during the 08-09 recession, we at ECS we went from about 90 employees down to 30, and that was probably one of the second hardest thing besides having the loss on the job. Was letting some of those men go. I had done everything I could do, and but that core 30, we stayed together. And then once we started growing again, some of those men came back that we had to let go. They said, we want to come back, and so we did that. But I mean, the merger has been a huge success, and all those guys. I mean, and that was my biggest fear in all of it was. When I laid that out there to those 80 men, would they buy in and trust my gut and my lead, and not we wouldn't have a mass exodus, and all of a sudden we went from 80 something people to 20, and I mean because I couldn't stop them if they wanted to leave, and we huddled them all up in the office one morning and we talked, and I did my best to assure them that this was done in not only the business's best interest and my best interest, but also them as my extended work family. Because, I mean, truthfully, I spend more time with those men over the last 20 years than I do with my own family. And they all bought in, and I think if you ask any one of them today, they would say that it has been nothing but great for them and
so they didn't
their
leave
families. No, sir. We lost, I think, 9 out of 81 is what we ended up losing. And
Grayson, I think that's incredible, and I think that right there is a testament to your leadership and to that the other guys too, to Jeff and James and what you guys have built. And I think that people that are listening to your story and they're saying, "Oh my gosh, how do you do that?" Right? How do you go and start working as a teenager and go to 1 year of college and turn around and get to the position where you are at today? And it's those leadership skills that you developed along the way. Grace, when I ask people to describe you and what kind of leader you are, they use words that you don't hear with leaders, that they say slow, soft, easy, sweet.
Yeah.
That one came from Brian.
Yeah,
he called you sweet.
Yeah.
Empathetic, patient, calm, kind. Like, those are not typical qualities that you associate with the leader of a business. But those are the qualities that have allowed you to keep that team together.
Yes, sir.
And have allowed you to stay successful. So how do you do that, Grace? How do you take that basket of qualities and keep that team motivated to where when you say, hey, we're going to go in this direction, will y'all come with me? They say yes.
I don't know that I can honestly answer that question, Brandon. I mean,
it's just who you are.
I think, by the grace of God, I was born into the family that I was born into. I had I mean, awesome grandparents, awesome parents, awesome aunts and uncles. You know, very supportive brother who ended up coming on board with us in August of 13, and he's still part of the company. And then, you know, Uncle Daryl and Jeff. But I mean, at the end of the day, it was just, I think who I was and how I was born, but also just always trying to treat people the way you wanted to be treated yourself. And
it wasn't about you.
Yeah,
it was about that family that you talk
yeah.
about, that work family, and making sure that that you were there and you were serving them.
Yeah, yeah, there for them, and to have their best interest at heart, and the families that they were starting, and as they started to have wives and children and all. I mean, it just, the family grew, and it was of my mindset that I need to take care of this family. I mean, you know.
That's how you become a success. That's how you have a successful business. You become a leader that people want to follow because of what you represent and what you've done for them. And that's the kind of leadership that you had displayed, and that's what you had. That's why you had their hearts.
Yeah. And it's all like say, hey, you know, no. I mean, I know I made mistakes along the way, but it's truly, I mean, looking in the rearview mirror, I really think it was how I treated them as people.
I agree.
Very simple.
I've had the joy of being able to watch you do that, and I've watched those qualities. Like, I've watched you do that, and I'm in a position of leadership, but I don't have patience. I don't do things slow. Like, I'm wired. I'm running all the time, and I watch you do it that way. But I also see that you found a way to do it and be productive and efficient.
Yeah.
And that's always amazing to me. I think it's a gift that you have, and I think it's definitely one of the reasons that you have been as successful as you have been. Grayson,
yes.
Give us the dirt. Tell us, man, you hit all these goals, you go out there, you achieve all these milestones that you want to achieve in life. What's next? What goals are left to achieve?
My main goal and my main objective, and it would be for the younger generation to be able to coach and lead and mentor those men, and hopefully prevent them from having some of the frustrations that I had along the way. Taking those things I've learned, and I told two young men the other day that one day we'll be running this company, helping run this company. I said, guys, y'all know how to do the work, but I said it's the people portion. And I said, if you can wrap your hands around that and learn how to work with everybody and treat people the way you want to be treated, and put them first, put others first, I said the sky is the limit for you in this company. And, we all come to work to provide for our families. I mean, you do want to make it about the employee, about the people, about the team. And I've always thought if people enjoyed coming to work and were happy to doing what they do, then the productivity and the execution will come by default because they believe in the mission.
That was a quote that Lindsay gave me about you. It's kind of been your life motto that if you get it right, people will notice.
Yep.
And everything you do, you try to make sure that you do it the right way.
Yep.
And people have noticed.
Yep. And no one's perfect, and it's like you've heard me say this before. An old man told me one time, he said, there is no losing. He said, it's winning or learning. He said, the only time you lose is if you make the same mistake 3 times and you haven't learned yet. And I've tried to take some of that stuff that some of those old school guys told me and just put it all together. And I like I say, I couldn't have done it without the supporting staff and everybody that's been there around me. I mean, it truly was a group effort, and I'm thankful that they trusted me enough to let me lead them and follow me to where we are today.
Well, Grayson, it's a wonderful story. I'm honored to be able to have the joy of being able to serve alongside of you. It's been fun getting to know you and to hear your story, and I have no doubt that there are business leaders out there that have been taking tons of notes off of your story right now, listening to this episode. But I also hope that there's a young man or woman out there that's thinking, my path doesn't have to look just like everybody else's.
Yeah.
I can be successful, and I can achieve my goals and take a different path.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's about hard work and and putting the people and the teammates first. And if you can do that, I mean, I think the sky's the limit for anyone.
Grayson, thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you for sharing your story, and we look forward to having you back.
All right, I look forward to being back, and thanks for having me today.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Give Us the Dirt. Our podcast is powered by Hoopah Grading Company in Charlotte, North Carolina, and produced by Well Run Media and Marketing. Visit our website at giveusthedirtpodcast.com and subscribe to this podcast on Apple and Google so you never miss an episode.